So Genshin Impact has been out for about 5 years now, and there's probably around 100 characters from the last time I've checked. But there is one character in this game that is definitively the abandoned character. No, we're not talking about Amber, we're not talking about Kaya or Lisa, none of those three. We're not even talking about Yao Yao. We're not even talking about her. We are talking about not a 4-star character, not a 5-star character, but you're probably thinking, oh, there is no 6 stars or higher in this game. And I say, there technically is. You know, there's a reason. You know, the 5 stars have their orange background, the 4 stars have their purple background. But you know who has a red background? Aloy. So the first thing I want to say is Aloy's kit is interesting to say the least. So her basic attacks aren't really nothing to talk about, but let's talk about her actual kit. Her skill, she throws a snowball. What's that got to do with anything? I don't know. But she throws a snowball at you, and then it breaks into smaller snowballs. And once it breaks into smaller snowballs, if enemies touch enough of them, they take damage, and it triggers another effect of getting hit by them. Her basic attacks become infused with cryo, which is pretty cool. I can't lie. You don't really see, from what I can remember, you don't really see bows having infusion unless it's on their charge shots. The only exception I can think of is Yoimiya, and if I remember correctly, Aloy is before Yoimiya, so she might be, from what I remember, the first bow character with infusion. I think so. I think she is, outside of their charge shots. But I think that's as unique as she gets. But there's so much they could have done with that skill. Like, the character has a staff with like a knife at the end of it she used. They didn't give her that. They could have gave her the ability to corrupt enemies, which could have made them fight for you or just go wild and attack everything around them. Like, can you imagine just, even though it wouldn't be that viable, could you imagine like attacking like the giant hilichurls or whatever they're called, and then having them rampage through for you? It would be such a cool thing. But nope, they didn't do that. But that would have been too lore accurate. And you know, you're saying, oh, that only works on machines. Well, I see that, but I also raise you a, she doesn't belong in this game anyway, because her world makes no sense tied into the Genshin world. But I digress on that. The next thing we're going to talk about is her ultimate. Her ultimate, yes, it has a cinematic, so technically she's not a 4-star, but she has a 4-star ult. She throws a chill water container into the air, shoots it down. Now, arguably, that's pretty cool. I kind of like the way it looks. But in terms of its impact, there's nothing. It's just one big hit, and one big hit attacks or ults can be cool. Hazo's charged up punch is cool. His ult is lame, but Hazo's ult to me is more satisfying, and he doesn't even have a cinematic. It's like a 1-second ult on top of that. Her ult should have been so much more. It could have been. I'm trying to think of the options that they could have done. Like I said, they could have just had her corrupt enemies. They could have had her swap to pulling the staff out. Orion Shogun can turn into like a sword fighter. Just give her like an install ultimate. But nope, they didn't do that. It's whatever. It's not that big of a deal. Now let's talk about the stuff that really, I would say, makes her an abandoned character. So when Aloy released, they gave her out for free, and she came with a weapon. The weapon is called Predator. I don't even remember the effects of it because it was so irrelevant. But that being besides the point, here is my problem. This character and her weapons they don't have constellations and cannot be refined. So Aloy, the moment you get her, she's at max power outside of like stats and artifacts. Her weapon is at its max. Her weapon isn't getting better unless you level it up. But the effect the weapon has cannot get any stronger. This is exclusive to, if I remember correctly, as far as I know, 2 weapons in the game. There's that, and I think there's sort of dissension. There is some weapon that only, I think, passive activates while it's on PlayStation. Which, that's another thing. Aloy's weapon only works when it's on PlayStation. When you bring it to PC or any other platforms, Switch or whatever else Genshin is on, then the passive literally deactivates. So they literally have to give you an incentive to use this character on the platform her games are on specifically. It's like, at that point, why give her a weapon? Just let her use a basic bow in the game. It really doesn't matter at that point. Y'all just doing it for theme purposes. And as for the constellation thing, that's just unforgivable. If you want to leave the weapon like that, even though because the weapon sucks anyway, you probably weren't going to use it, that's cool. But to not give a character constellations, and here's the funniest thing. If you want to fight me on Aloy belonging and making sense, her weapon's description itself says it doesn't belong in this world. So what makes you think if her weapon doesn't belong in this world, if they can't create a bow like her bow, what the hell makes you think they gonna create a fucking the character in this world that make it make sense? Another thing I think they could have done with Aloy that they didn't do, they could have incorporated, if I remember correctly, the thing is a scan, the thing she wears onto her ear that like scans the environment. They could have incorporated something like that. Something small. They have like the elemental sight. Her elemental sight, maybe if you was using her when you activate it, you see the scan pop off. You see that the screen like turn purplish and you can see the flowers and the butterflies, all that stuff. It would be a cool little addition. Nope, they didn't do that. Do something goofy. I don't care what it is. Like I said, I don't care about the character being viable, but if I'm with a collab, I'm here for the fanfare and the fan service. There was no fan service here, bro. This was probably a kit of another character, and they just reskinned it. That's literally what it feels like. But let me know what y'all think about Aloy. I feel like that character had so much potential, and they just said, fuck it. I'm bringing this up. I was thinking about this a little bit before the Honkai Fate collab, but then I got sidetracked trying to get into that, and I reinstalled the game, then uninstalled it 2 days later, because I was like, oh, I realized Expedition 33 is right there. I can just go buy that. I'm gonna go do that. But that's all I gotta say on this Aloy situation. Like I said, let me know what you think about the character being completely unfinished and just being left behind by MiHoYo. But that's it. True Kingston, and I'm out.